In YouTube terms, that basically means a video that nobody on earth asked for. But one of my New Year's resolutions was to talk about more Disney films, and so far in 2022, big old goose egg. And we're gonna remedy that right now. So yes, ladies and gentlemen, your eyes do not deceive you. Welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to be looking at Monsters, Inc. And I think it's perfect timing, seeing as how this movie is old enough to go to the bar and buy a drink now, 21 years old. And with Turning Red coming out in a couple weeks, I think it was a perfect time to talk about a Pixar movie. And Monsters, Inc. was one of my favorite Pixar movies growing up. This is the first one that was directed by Pete Docter, who would go on to become a Pixar icon. If that name doesn't sound familiar, look back at movies like Up, Inside Out, and Soul, all three of which I consider masterpieces. And let me just say, especially after just finishing a rewatch for this film, this is such an inventive idea. Monsters Incorporated is a gigantic scare factory in the monster world, and they provide electricity to the world basically through the screams of children. That's a really interesting idea. One of their top scarers is hulking blue menace James P. Sullivan, voiced by John Goodman. His assistant, of course, is best friend and roommate Mike Wazowski, voiced by Billy Crystal, who has a brilliant character design. And one of the key things that you'll learn about Monsters, Inc. from the get-go is that they think human children are the most toxic creatures alive, and that one touch on a human child could kill them, which creates a massive slew of problems when little Boo visits the monster world and chaos ensues. So I know Monsters, Inc. quite well, ladies and gentlemen. I watched this VHS tape, God, I don't even know how many times, like all the time. This and Toy Story 2 were on repeat in my house when I was growing up. I adored this film. Now, sitting here as a grown-up 25-year-old man, obviously, I can take off the rose-colored glasses and see the slew of problems that this movie has, but you know what? Monsters, Inc. is still a very, very strong entry for Pixar, especially in the earlier days. One of the key things that jumped out at me on this most recent rewatch I had just moments ago, it's the animation. For 2001, this is stellar. This world just comes off so incredibly unique. That opening scene where Mike and Sully are walking to work is just so damn creative. And Sully himself is animated brilliantly. You could see every individual hair on this guy. And I've said it once before, and I'll say it again, Mike Wazowski is, personally speaking, one of my favorite character designs in an animated film ever. Just because it's so simple. A green sphere, a one-eyed feisty little guy, it's perfect. And the voice casting, for the most part, pretty spot on. John Goodman, you can definitely tell, looking at Sully, this is John Goodman voicing him, for sure. Looking at Randall, your villainous lizard creature who's Sullivan's main scare rival on the scare floor, like, you could just look at Randall and his slithery antics, becoming invisible and camouflaging himself within the walls. You can just tell. That's Steve Buscemi. And lo and behold, that is Steve Buscemi's voice coming out, and he does a brilliant job as well. This entire cast from top to bottom, phenomenal. Jennifer Tilly as Mike's girlfriend, Celia. I love how her little hair particles have these little cute snake creatures on them. James Coburn as our CEO, Henry J. Waternoose, is oh so intimidating with that low baritone voice all throughout. Even the character design itself, it just gives off a lot of authority there. Even these side characters have some good voice actors on them. John Ratzenberger as our abominable or adorable snowman, so funny with his lemon snow cones. Frank Oz is in this film as Fungus, Randall's slimy little assistant. I bet you probably didn't remember that the voice of Yoda was in this. Bob Peterman as Roz, our sluggish secretary, is just so funny and so fun to impersonate as well. I'm watching you, Wazowski. Always watching. Hell, even these janitors that Mike and Sully encounter once they enter the factory for the first time in this movie, they're just so damn funny. Oh, sorry. And that's one of the big things about Monsters, Inc. that I still love to this very day. It's this story and this whole concept being put to fruition on the big screen. It's just so creative. I hate to keep using that word over and over again, and I hate sounding like a broken record, but it's just so damn creative. That whole climax with the whole big door vault trying to get Boo back into her home base, it is so incredibly exciting. It's literally like you're riding a gigantic roller coaster at Six Flags. Like, you have Boo, who is so into the roller coasters, Sully is scared out of his mind, and Mike is about to throw up over the both of them. you really get that feeling like you're on a roller coaster, and you get that whole range of emotions in there. It's perfect. Speaking of perfect, I gotta talk about this relationship between Sully and Boo. Now, first things first, you either love or you hate Boo. There's no getting around it. Some people are just so damn annoyed by Boo every time they watch this film. Sue me, I love this. I think Boo is adorable. And that brings me to another thing that really works about Monsters, Inc. I've already sort of alluded to it here and there. It's the comedy. The fact that these big hulking monsters are scared of this 3-year-old girl, it's so funny. It just, that contrast there, brilliant. And I could go on for ages about how much I love Monsters, Inc. I've rewatched this film so many times, and it's just so damn funny every single time. But especially these past couple of years, I've noticed a fair amount of issues with Monsters, Inc. First of all, I mentioned Randall and Steve Buscemi being perfect casting. I feel like the villainous plot in this movie is a little bit too overcomplicated for its own good. They sort of hint at Randall just wanting to break the scare record, but it turns out that it's a lot more complicated than that. Randall actually wants to build this gigantic machine to evolve the company into something grander, and as a matter of fact, he doesn't care about the scare record, and he wants to get the children's screams out by force through this gigantic machine. It just comes off, I don't know, it just comes off a little lazy. I mean, maybe Randall as a character is just lazy in general, and we just don't know it, but I don't know. It just didn't really strike me as much as it should. And you all know that a trope that I hated with Disney going into the early 2010s was the surprise villain reveal. Monsters, Inc. has one of those, and I'm not going to spoil it just in case there's like a couple of you who haven't seen it and you're watching this video. But let's just say that there is a villain reveal in Monsters, Inc. surprisingly going into the climax. And let's just say it's pretty darn obvious. Like, even as a young kid watching this movie for the first time, I was very easily able to guess who the villain was. Like, I just took one look at a certain character and I was like, that's it, they're in on the evil plan. I don't know, it works, but it does suffer from the consequences of being predictable. And now, for the point that'll probably get me a lot of hate for this video, let's talk about Billy Crystal as Mike Wazowski. Now listen, Billy Crystal does a wonderful job with this material, and rumor has it that he felt really bad about turning down the role of Buzz Lightyear in the mid-90s for the first Toy Story film. So, he took the role of Mike Wazowski instead, and I don't know, I just don't think this was the right casting. I'm gonna piggyback off of the nostalgia critic when I say this, but he makes a really, really excellent point. I feel like Billy Crystal's style of comedy for this character design, it just doesn't really fit. Like, could you imagine someone like a Danny DeVito, or better yet, a Jack Black fitting this character model? The comedy probably would have worked a lot better, especially in the case of the latter. Like, I am just imagining Jack Black would go on to do School of Rock a couple of years after this. That's the style of comedy that I was looking for out of a feisty character like this. Billy Crystal's style of comedy isn't bad whatsoever. I love the man to death. I love him as Miracle Max in Princess Bride, but his style of comedy for this character, I don't know. In hindsight, it doesn't really work for me. And this isn't to say he's doing a bad job at all. It just wasn't the right casting. But heck, I grew up loving Mike Wazowski regardless of the voice that was there. I grew up loving Monsters, Inc. I still do to this very day, despite my flaws that I carry along with it. And if you haven't seen this movie yet, what the heck are you waiting for? With Turning Red coming out in a couple of weeks, you should be binging a bunch of Pixar right now. I'm gonna give Monsters, Inc. an A-. Certainly a solid first entry for Pete Docter as director, and he would go on, of course, his career would only skyrocket from this point forward. But these are all, of course, just my opinions. Let me know what you guys thought of Monsters, Inc. down in the comments section below. Have you guys seen the prequel? Have you seen the sequel series that's out on Disney+? I did review that a few months back, if you guys wanted to check that out. As you guys know, I love discussing all brand new things cinema and entertainment over here on the regular. So if this is your first time visiting the channel today, do consider smashing that subscribe button as well as that notification bell right next to it. That way you guys can always stay in the loop. And if you enjoyed this video, don't forget, smash that thumbs up on your way out. This would also be tremendous help in getting this content out there. And stay tuned for more exciting content hitting this channel very, very soon. This Monday, expect my review for Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows Part 2 to drop. I'll also be looking at The Batman next weekend, finally. Turning Red also hits Disney Plus on March 11th, so definitely expect a review for that when the time comes on the subject of Pixar. Clearly a lot of exciting stuff for you guys to look forward to. I am so excited to start that discussion. Y'all are the best. Thank you all so much for your support up to this point. And with all that being said, back talk, commence.